Turning points change the course of our lives, whether it's a big decision, overcoming an obstacle or tragedy, or taking a leap of faith. These stories of inspiration and resilience are what Turning Point is all about. Hi everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this very first episode of Turning Point. I am beyond excited to introduce our very first guest. For more than a decade, millions of Canadians woke up with Marci Ien on Canada AM. She was also a host on The Social. She is an award-winning journalist who has covered stories right across the country. And the latest turning point in her life has led her to federal politics. Marci is now the MP for Toronto Centre, and we'll be hearing much more about that today. Thank you so much for being here, Marci.
Oh, Priya, my gosh, it's my pleasure to be with you, and congratulations on this show.
Thank you. I'm so excited. It's kind of this idea I've had for more than a year now, and it feels really good to have it come to fruition. So thank you.
Thanks for inviting me. Privileged to be a guest.
Great to be here. Great to have you here as our first guest. I know so much has changed. I feel like I just finished reading your book, and I think there are so many turning points we could talk about, but we're really going to start with this latest one. You decided to run for federal politics in September. I imagine so much time went into making that decision about such a big change. But so when did it really start? When did you start thinking about politics as an option?
There actually wasn't a time, and it wasn't something I had ever thought about, Priya. If you had asked me at this point last year, or even 6 months ago, or told me that this is what I'd be doing, I would have said, absolutely not. What exactly are you talking about? But it's interesting, what happens when things come together. And when I say that, making the transition, the turning point from news to The Social was huge. Because what that meant was I was no longer telling the stories of other people, which is what I did as a reporter, but I was telling my own. And in doing so, I was talking about my life as a Black woman in Canada, the country I was born in, the country that I love so much, but the challenges that I had faced professionally and personally. I was, talking about more women in politics. I was talking about diversity in politics. I was talking about BIPOC issues. I was saying that Black lives mattered. I was talking about being the mother of Black children. And in doing so, a lot of people reached out. The show that I did was called The Social, and they reached out and they said, please don't stop talking. Please continue, because you're not just telling your story, you're telling our story as well. And so when this riding opened up, and it was, the place I was born in St. Jamestown, I thought, wow, maybe this is an opportunity to put some action to the things that I've been talking about, sitting on my comfortable talk show perch. Maybe I push myself into an arena, that I can actually action some of these things, and I threw my hat in the ring. And frankly, I didn't know what would happen. A lot of people said, this is a liberal stronghold, you're a shoo-in, but I didn't see it that way. I saw myself as the rookie in all of this. My opponents both had been in elections before. I hadn't. This was all new to me. I was a journalist coming into this, so we operated like we were behind, like we were in last place and wanted to earn each and every vote. And that meant grassroots. That meant connecting with people where they were, which is hard in a pandemic. So, catching people on the street, catching them in patios, catching them as they walked with their kids to and from school, but literally earning each vote and telling people why I wanted to serve them, why I was walking away from what was a very, comfortable career to do this, and what I thought I could bring to the table. And the fact that this was full circle for me because I was born in this riding. And so that's how it all started. I really didn't have a plan. This wasn't the plan. The plan was to continue doing a show and broadcast. I thought that I was using my microphone well. I thought that I was raising issues, frankly, that other people weren't always raising, and that I could on this platform. But this wasn't the plan at all. This plan found me.
Wow, the turning point in this case really came to you. And was it a phone call? Was it an email? What sparked this?
So it was talking about all the things I was talking about, and then it was a call from the Prime Minister's office. And it was, hey, have you ever thought about this? And I had been approached before But this time, given the timing, and I will say, the killing of George Floyd precipitated a lot of this too. I thought the timing is now. The timing for my voice and my lived experience is now. So if I'm going to make a run, it's not 2 years from now, it's not 5 years from now, it's right now, because there are social issues that are out there and on the table, and things that I think I can help with.
I think a lot of people listening right now or watching will remember growing up watching you every morning on Canada AM, like I did, starting my day with you. And in that role, like you mentioned, you really had to, you were doing news.
Yes.
You weren't allowed really to give your opinions. I also, from my experience, know exactly what that's like. And then you talk about this shift to the social, where now you were able to share all of these personal stories, your feelings about especially issues like BIPOC issues, like you mentioned. And then this phone call from the Prime Minister's office leads you to have this new opportunity.
To contemplate
yes.
what this would be like, because it wasn't something I was thinking about at all.
Yeah.
But I couldn't say no, Priya. And that's what really stopped me in my tracks. I'm a decisive person. I can say, don't want to do that, want to do that. And I could not say no right away. And that made me think about this. And it made me think about how I was living my life and what I was doing in career and all those things. And it all came back to service.
You had a lot of conversations in making this decision with other politicians. Of course, I know your family is incredibly important to you.
Yes.
What did they say when you raised the idea of running for office?
Well, first and foremost, it was my Canada AM co-host, Seamus O'Regan, now a minister in government, who I called real fast and said, tell me what you think. And he said, I can't unthink this. This is brilliant, and we need your voice. We need you. And I said, I want to look at this from a female perspective too. What does it look like in terms of family? What does it look like when you have kids and you're in politics? I don't have a partner, so my kids need me. Certainly, I wanted to look at everything. And so I talked to the Deputy Prime Minister. I talked to Chrystia Freeland. I talked to Marci Ien, Minister Ien. I talked to Kirsty Duncan. I talked to a lot of women to get their perspective on what this life looks like. I did what a reporter would do. I did my research. That's what I was doing. And I was interviewing people. That's what I was doing. And then the person that really helped me the most, I would say, outside of my family with this process was Minister Ahmed Hussein. Minister Hussein and I have known each other through the years, been at different events, but he has been so gracious. He got in touch with me after I wrote an op-ed for the Globe and Mail on being stopped by the police in my driveway. And he shared with me that he had had a similar instance in Atlantic Canada when he was driving. And he shared with me, what it was like for him growing up in Regent Park, and in essence being carded all the time and being targeted all the time. And we had a really amazing, honest conversation. And he said, you know what, I'm here for you anytime. So when we were looking at this scenario and the possibility of me running, we spent some time together. And he is one of those people who just said, ask me anything, like just whatever you want to ask. And I did. And so spent a lot of time with him, and he helped me. He helped me greatly and continues to guide and to be an ear. And I so appreciate that. So upon talking to all of these people that I've mentioned, and including my family, last but certainly not least, my 16-year-old Blaze, who I said, Blaze, I have plans for us. I've got to get you into university in a couple of years. I have to make sure I can pay for that. I've got to take care of you and your brother. And she said, you're saying a lot of I right now, Mom, but it comes down to either it's about you or it's about all of us. That's the decision. And I said, Blaze, you were 16 going on 65. You were clearly a sage, and I'm choosing all of us.
Wow, yeah, wise words from a 16-year-old. So would you say, was that the moment you knew that this is what you were going to do?
Yeah,
you were going to...
after talking to Blaze. Yep, absolutely. I talked to everybody else, and then it was Blazy who just put things in perspective very, very quickly. And she was right. That was the decision. And I made it.
And I saw her with you after you found out you had won, and you came out together. For me, that was my first time seeing you on the other side of the microphone and seeing reporters asking you questions. Yeah. How did it feel for you to be in that kind of opposite role to what you're used to?
Yeah, it felt a little strange at first, but I was so overcome, Priya, with joy, with gratitude to the people of Toronto Centre who said, yeah, we choose you. It was a big moment. It was not an easy campaign. We worked from sunup to sundown and beyond trying to connect with people. And my gosh, what incredible validation that they said, yeah, you know what, rookie, we're gonna choose you. And to walk out there with my daughter, it was quite emotional. To walk out there with my daughter and hold her hand and show her that this is possible, and not just her, other kids too, because that's important. And that's part of the reason that I'm here too, because it's about saying to kids right now, this is possible for you. If a kid born in St. Jamestown and raised in Scarborough, the daughter of immigrant parents who came to this country with nothing, who came here just to go to school, can be here, so can you. And that's what this is too. It's about modeling that, not just for my kid, but everybody else's.
This has been a theme of your career too. You were the first Black woman to co-host a national morning show in this country. You have really set an example for people of color right across the country. I know, myself included, like I said, grew up watching you, and that was one of the reasons I felt like I can pursue a career in journalism. I can pursue a career in television. And now this theme is really continuing as you enter politics. Like you just said, you're showing others that they too can do this. But you are a part of a very small group of Black women in politics in our country. So how do you think your experience in journalism, where you were also part of a very small group of people of color, how do you think that helped prepare you for this next stage?
My gosh, there is a transference of skills I've found. Doing this, connecting, listening, that skill set where it's not just asking somebody how they are, but it's actually looking them in the eye, pausing and having a conversation. Connectivity is something that we take for granted, but doesn't always happen. We're busy, right? We ask people how they are, and as we're asking them, we're walking by them. That's how are you doing? And we're walking by, we're not even waiting for a response. And so what I found is actually connecting and listening to people. What are your challenges right now? What are you worried about right now? What's going well? What's not going well? And taking the time to listen, taking the time, for them to just be heard is huge. And that's what we do as reporters. We want to know about other people's lives. So there is that. Research is also huge. Researching something, knowing about it, being learned. That is another skill transfer. And so I think I bring that, but listening is the most important. It really is, because it's a skill I think that people take for granted, but it's an important one. People aren't heard. They aren't, because we're not taking the time to do that. And that is first and foremost for me.
And you certainly have been doing a lot of listening. I know you mentioned earlier you talked to thousands of people during the month of campaigning. You heard what they're concerned about, what they want you to push for in Ottawa. So what are some of those issues? What are some of the things that you're really going to be focused on as an MP?
Affordable housing was a huge issue. My riding, St. Jamestown is in my riding, and Moss Park and Regent Park, Cabbagetown. But in Moss Park right now, there's a veritable tent city, and winter is coming. So affordable housing, homelessness, they go hand in hand. And in that, there's a mental health component too. Those are the things that people were really concerned about, and that is top of list for me. Some of those things like housing are cross-jurisdictional, but in looking at that, I do think it's also a time for all levels of government to be working together. If we can't work together during a pandemic, it's never going to happen. We've seen good examples of that, but that's something that needs to be continued. So one of the first things that I have done is to have a meeting with Kristen Wong-Tam, who is the municipal councillor in my riding, to have a meeting with Suze Morrison, who is the MPP in the riding, to figure out how we can work together to get some of this done. Because without doing that, it's going to be very, very difficult. So especially when we're dealing with something like housing and homelessness that crosses all of those jurisdictions. So we have to be on the same page and work together, and those meetings have taken place.
You talk about this, collaboration between people who maybe would not normally work together, and that is one thing that certainly has come out of the pandemic. We've seen politicians of all different stripes.
Look at Doug Ford and Chrystia Freeland.
Right. Who before the election, I don't think anybody would have imagined that happening. So there's certainly a lot of trailblazing going on in that area, and it's great to hear that you're continuing it. But this is also another theme of your career. So no surprise here that you are finding new and creative ways to do things and taking chances. When I was reading your book, one of the things that really stood out to me was when you talked about this pressure of having to be the best, of there being no room for error because you were one of few people of color, because even though maybe nobody said it to you that you were being held to another standard, I know that is the case.
That is the case.
That's reality.
That's reality.
And you constantly feeling like you had to prove you're not just a token minority. So what kept you going on those hard days? In
the days where I wanted to run, and let there be no mistake, there are days I wanted to run. There were days when I said, enough of this. But what kept me going is that I knew it wasn't just about me. When you walk through a door like that, as a trailblazer, it means that you're carrying others with you. So everything that I did, the lens that I looked at it in anyway, was that if I do this, that means other people, it opens the door for other people too. It isn't just about me. If I don't do well, that door may close. And that's where the pressure comes from. And it's not like anybody is saying, you have to perform this way. I put that pressure on myself, that I made sure that my research was on point. I made sure I was prepared for every interview. I made sure that I did research to, ask questions that maybe hadn't been asked before, that I was prepared. And that meant, when you have a call time of 4 a.m, that meant sometimes waking up at 2 a.m. to finish a book or, to read something online while my children were sleeping so that I was prepared when I went in. All of that work because I wanted to be better. And I don't know if I always was, but the hope was I'm here, and I'm here because I deserve to be here, not because I'm Black and I met a quota. I'm here because I can do the job and I can do it well. And I was trying to prove that every single day. The other part of that equation is that, there are people at the outset who said no, who said, you don't have that it factor. You don't have what it takes to do this. And when someone says that has been in the business a long time, you've got a choice. You either believe it or you rage against it. And I chose to rage against it, but I heard that voice every day, that you're not good enough to be here. And so I raged against it, and it was proving that person wrong every single day and making sure that things were right so that the people coming up would have an open door. That's why I stayed. And believe me, there were many times that I was pushed and thought, I can't do this. But the reason I stayed was because I knew that there were other people at stake. There were other lives at stake. There were other livelihoods at stake. And I wasn't going to do that.
And I think there are so many journalists who would thank you for that, myself included. Reading your book, what people will know is all of this, your work ethic, the hard work you put into researching your interviews, into being the best. What they won't know is what people like me have experienced from your personal mentorship. I talked to you during one of the hardest points in my television career. I spent, you'll remember, hours crying about some really hard moments for me. And you, despite your busy schedule, took the time to come talk to me. So I think that it's really important for people to know that you're you're not just when you tell these stories, you actually are out there doing the work. And I'm not alone. I've talked to several other journalists who've had the same experience. So thank you. And I guess my question about that is, how do you manage the burdens of other people along with this pressure that you faced yourself?
Priya, I don't see it as a burden. You were never a burden. No one else was a burden. It was an honor, that you would find it fit to come to me and that we could share stories. It was never a burden. You're going to make me cry. It was never a burden, ever. I don't see it that way. I see it as a responsibility, and I see it as friendship. It's not a burden.
Well, I think that's really beautiful, and I thank you, on behalf of all of the other journalists that I know that you have helped along the way too. Yeah. Let's switch gears for a minute, because I know so many Canadians know you from your reporting, from your hosting on Canada AM, but your television career, I didn't even know this until I read your book, but your television career started when you were a child. Yeah. You were on this show called Circle Square, starting when you were 10 years old, right?
I was 10. That is, oh my gosh, that was 41 years ago.
Wow, unbelievable.
What the heck is going on with that?
So what do you remember from that time?
Oh my gosh, I remember the audition. It was, my dad was a high school principal, and there was a teacher in his school whose kid did commercials. And I grew up in Scarborough, and at that time, amalgamation hadn't happened yet. And so what that meant was, if there was a PA day in Scarborough, my dad's school was in North York, I would go to school with him because his school was still open. So I spent a lot of time in my dad's schools. And this teacher got to know me pretty well. This open audition came up, and she said, "You really should have Marci audition for this." And kudos to my dad, to my parents, because these are Trinidadian parents who know nothing about television, who are all about work ethic and, school and grades. And here I was, this artsy kid, and this teacher saw it. And he said, yeah, you know what, let's look into it, let's do it. So I remember doing the audition. They had me read some script. I read a script. They had me sing a song. I sang a song. There were a couple of callbacks. And the next thing you know, we were being offered a spot. And that was 6 years of my childhood. It was from 10 to 16. So the bulk of it, I remember, the family aspect. These were not just my colleagues on a show. This was my family. I spent more time with them than I did with my own family a lot of the time. And it's interesting because many of them are in the field of broadcast and writing and that kind of thing. So it's interesting where everybody ended up. But it was amazing, and it was camaraderie, and it was teamwork. But it was also work ethic. So at 10 years old, interestingly enough, I know what a 6 a.m. call time. I knew what a 6 a.m. call time looked like. I knew what memorizing script looked like. I knew what it meant to listen to a director and a producer and a writer and all of those things that prepared me for later life. So very, very interesting.
Yeah, it's so neat that started at a young age, and that it really kind of laid the foundation for the rest of your career.
It did.
I could talk to you all day about the highlights of your career, but there's one I want to ask you about specifically.
Okay.
It's Stevie Wonder.
Oh my gosh, Stevie!
Okay, so for those of you listening or watching who don't know this story, you can Google it after. You can still see the footage online. That's what I did. But I'm just going to let you tell the story. So tell us everything.
Okay, so Canada AM, I had the privilege of interviewing Stevie Wonder. It was via satellite. So he was in LA. It was very, very early for him, very early morning. And he was gracious. He was doing a tour, and it was supposed to be his final tour. And I asked him everything. I asked him about civil rights and Motown days and, the Jackson 5 and Diana Ross and all the people of it was incredible. He was amazing. And there wasn't anything that he wouldn't answer. And close to the end of the interview, I said, "Stevie, everybody has a favorite Stevie song, and this is mine. And it's a song called Do I Do." And so I sang a little bit of it. And he said, "Girl, when I come to Toronto, you need to come on stage with me and sing that song." I said, "No." I said, "Stevie, absolutely not. What we will do, hopefully, when you come to Toronto is do a proper interview. I would love to have you in studio, so please make some time for us. You're welcome on Canada AM. Please come." And we said goodbye, okay? It was several weeks later, coming upon a Thanksgiving weekend. Stevie Wonder was performing at then Air Canada Centre, now Scotia Arena. And I got a call at 3:00 on that Friday afternoon from my producer who said, Stevie Wonder's people have been in touch. They want to know if Marci can join him on stage tonight when he performs. And I said, pardon? And she said, I'm not kidding. There are instructions for you. There is a time that he will come and get you. I had tickets to the show, by the way, because I was just going to go to the show. So he'll come and get you. You'll check in with them. And I said, okay. I remember calling my friend Dwight. Dwight Drummond is an anchor for CBC in Toronto. And we are school friends. And I said, Dwight, do you want to come with me to this concert? Stevie Wonder's people have just called. This is what's going on. He said, I'll finish up the newscast and I'll meet you there. So we meet there. We take our seats. Stevie's people come over to explain that at a certain point in the show, they will come and bring me up on stage and we'll go from there. So that's exactly what happened. They came and got me. Dwight was using his cell phone to record some of it. And I walked up, sat down on a piano bench next to Stevie Wonder. He sang a verse and then he turned to me and said, your turn. And so there I was singing on stage and it was so much fun. And his performances it's like big band. So there were dancers and there were backup singers and there were like, you name it on stage. It was amazing. And we sang it together. And then my sister tells me the story of her phone it was off the chain. People were going, is that your sister? I'm at a concert right now. I think I see your sister on stage with Stevie Wonder. People were taking snippets. It was all over social media. And then after talking about it on AM, I think it was the next day or a couple days later, my then co-host Jeff Hutchison said to me, oh my gosh, Marci, what a bucket list moment. And I said, Jeff, who puts this on their bucket list? Bucket list? I mean, you put travel to a country you've never been to on a bucket list. You don't put singing next to Stevie Wonder sitting on a piano bench in an arena. I said, I would never even have dreamed this. So that is the Stevie Wonder story.
Oh, it's incredible. You looked so comfortable up there too, I have to say. You were dancing after, and what an incredible moment. Just to relive that with you is really, really incredible. I want to come back to your book here because in your book, you tell this beautiful story of watching your father, a high school principal at the time, showing his students a cutout of a tombstone and asking them, what's the most important part of this tombstone? And, eventually he explains that it's the dash between the dates. Obviously a dash is visualized as a straight line, but we both know that it's actually made up of turning points, of twists and turns along the way. So as you enter this new stage of your life, what do you want people to say about your dash?
That she did a good job and continues to do a good job. She listened. She advocated for change. I mean, I would, even people, and this was during the campaign, people who said to me, I don't care about politics. What have politicians ever done for me? People who felt left behind. My rate of success, the way I measured things, was seeing those people or hearing from those people who said, I was disengaged, but you know what? I'm going to vote for you. I really didn't care about politics, but I want to give you a chance. That's a huge level of success for me. People who had said the system doesn't work and who saw something in me or heard something and thought, maybe, just maybe, this woman can try to bring about some kind of change. That's huge for me. Just that I did the job well, that I served well. That's it.
Well, I think that's beautiful, and I think that is exactly what people would say about you now, and there's no doubt that there will be much more of that to come as you embark on this new chapter in your life. So thank you so much for being here, Marci, for sharing your stories about your journalism career, for sharing your hopes for the future, and we hope to have you back again as a guest sometime.
Anytime, Priya, and thank you for thinking of me. This has been amazing, and thank you for your thoughtful questions. I appreciate that.
Great to have you.